The Key to the Indian by Lynne Banks. And she says, I dedicate this book to today's people of the Longhouse. Acknowledgements. Thanks to Marge Barak for her trenchant criticism and to Ronald Wright for writing Stolen Continents, to name only the living among the authors I have studied, but especially thanks to the people who helped me most in my efforts to get things right. Those Mohawks of today who welcomed me into their reserves in Canada and let me ask a million questions and be part of their lives for a brief but very moving time. Chapter 1. Anyone for camping? Okay, you chaps, I've got an announcement to make. The three boys stopped eating and looked up. Adele and Guion exchanged puzzled glances. It was the you chaps that did it. Together with their father's hail fellow well-meant manner, he simply was not the you chaps type, but stranger was to come. What would you say to us all going camping? Adiel dropped his jaw. Guion dropped something noisier, his knife and fork onto his plate. A piece of toad in the hole was dislodged and fell to the floor in a small shower of rich brown gravy. Oh, Guion, don't show off. What a mess, said their mother, irritated. Kitsa, leave it, as the cat, lurking hopefully under the table, pounced. Guion wrestled it from her and plunked it triumphantly back on his plate. You're not planning to eat it now? She snatched it up and left the room with it, returning at once with a wet cloth. What are you talking about, Lionel? Camping? Camping is what I'm talking about. What do you say, boys? Adiel said quite gently, Are you feeling all right, Dad? Never better. Camping? I mean, are you kidding? Camping? You mean on our own, without you? No, of course not. With me. There was a silence. Omri glanced at his mother. She had mopped up the splashes of gravy and was crouched beside Guion, just her face showing above the tabletop, as if her head had been cut off like John the Baptist's, and stood among the dishes. This disquieting impression was aided by the glassiness of her eyes as she stared at her husband. The two older boys were staring too. Only Omri was not reacting with astonishment. He sat with narrowed eyes, only pausing for a moment before hacking into another batter-encrusted sausage. Camping, indeed. That'd be the day when his dad even dreamt of such a hearty outdoor pursuit, especially after the one and only time he'd ever tried it, which had ended in total disaster on the same day it began. Omri grinned secretly at the memory of the four of them, trailing home, not from some wild moorland or forest, but from the local common, after they had failed to put up the tent, and the skies had opened, drenching everything, including the food. This had been left exposed after Guion nicked a premature sandwich out of the cooler and left the lid off. The sunroof on the car had also been left open. Their dad, humiliated by his defeat by tent, couldn't say much except, That's it, boys, home. Their mother had been very nice. She hadn't even laughed, at least not much. It was only later Omri had stopped to wonder why there had been a casserole and 5 baked potatoes in the oven when she had been told they wouldn't be back for 2 days. Now there his dad was at the head of the table, beaming at them, the very picture of hearty, extrovert father. He was even tilting his chair back and rubbing his hands. Guion snorted. The front legs of their dad's chair hit the floor. What, may I ask, is so funny? You! Dad, camping! You're not serious, you can't be. Don't you want to go, then? Guion considered it, then he said, Would it be like last time? Of course not, said their father haughtily. That was just play camping. You're older now, and we'll do it properly. We can, now we live in the country, Adiel said. But when could we do it? How could we do it, said their mother. You'd need a big tent, enough for 4, a stove, sleeping bags, and God knows what. We've got sleeping bags from school trips, said Adiel. We could buy lots of new stuff, said Guion. Anyway, where would we go? From here, there are wonderful camping places in almost every direction. We wouldn't have to fall back on some suburban common. Omri looked out of the window. It was true. All around them stretched the glorious Dorset countryside. Hills, woods, fields, rivers, and the sea. Only a few miles away it might be fun. The only thing was, there was something behind this. Omri knew something that wasn't... Somehow, this wasn't really about camping, that their father had a hidden agenda. It had to be something to do with the Indian. Only 2 days ago, his dad had found out. When the family had first moved into this old Dorset farmhouse, Omri had made some makeshift shelves in his bedroom out of raw planks standing on loose boards, in the hollows of three bricks. Omri had hidden his most precious possessions, the plastic figures of his friends Little Bear, his wife Bright Stars, their baby Tall Bear, and separately Matron and Sergeant Fickets. They were toys now, but they hadn't always been toys. Through the fantastic magic of an old bathroom cupboard and the key that had belonged to his great-great-aunt, and then to his mother, they had come to life. They'd turned into real people, people from the past whom the magic of the cupboard and the key had brought into Omri's life at various times in the last few years. How carefully Omri had guarded his secret, and how hard it had been to keep from telling anyone. With the two people who already knew, his best friend Patrick and Patrick's cousin Emma, living miles away, there was no one to share it with. He dared not tell his brothers, though there'd been times when it had almost just burst out of him. Then he'd found the account, which had changed everything. The account was contained in an old leather-bound notebook, left hidden in the roof thatch by his great-great-aunt Jessica Charlotte. Omri's mother called her wicked great-great-aunt, and she had admitted at least one pretty bad act when she'd stolen her sister's earrings and been the cause of a tragedy. She had been a singer and an actress with psychic gifts, and she'd owned this farmhouse. The account had been written on her deathbed. From this wonderful document, Omri had learned how the key and the cupboard had been made, how the magic had got into them. Luckily, Patrick had come to spend a half-term with him, in time to share the latest marvel. Jessica Charlotte herself, brought back from the past to sing them a music hall song, and make herself, however briefly, part of their lives. And then, 2 days ago, his father had gone to Omri's room while Omri had been out, and put up the proper shelves he'd promised him, and had disturbed his arrangements and found the figures. He'd put them all in the cupboard and locked the door. Of course they'd come to life inside, and his dad had put a lot of twos and twos from the past together and realized, and later he'd seen them, been introduced to them, and accepted it. It took a special kind of grown-up not only to accept magic when he saw it, but to promise and swear he'd never, ever tell a living soul. Omri knew his secret was safe, and, at last, he had someone in the family to share it with. There was a problem, though. They'd talked about it, Omri and his dad. They'd gone out for a long walk together by the sea yesterday and talked about it. It wasn't their problem, it was Little Bear's. Little Bear was an Iroquois Indian from the late 18th century, and he was in trouble, or rather his whole tribe was, and as Little Bear was chief, he was deeply concerned. And when he had suddenly been magicked back to Omri's time, when the key was turned and the cupboard door opened, his first words had been, "This good, I have much need." Well, his very first word had been, "Brother!" He and Omri were blood brothers. Luckily, the problem, though urgent, was not something that had to be dealt with on the spot. It was an ongoing problem the tribe was experiencing, which Little Bear had tried to explain, something to do with British treachery, which made Omri puzzled and uncomfortable, though he didn't really grasp what it was all about. But Little Bear seemed to take it for granted that Omri, whom he had originally assumed to be a great spirit with all sorts of magic powers, would come to his help. "We'll have to go back," said Omri as they walked along the cliff tops with the salty wind blowing off the English Channel into their faces. "Explain to me, how does one go back?" Omri did his best. He himself had only gone back once, to Little Bear's village, when it had been under attack by the Iroquois' enemies, the Algonquins. "You have to get into something," he said. "You remember my wooden chest, the one I got in the Saturday market, the one with the name L. Bear on it?" "L. Bear! The initials on the plaque are L.B. Omri nodded hard. The plaque was a stone slab built into their house. They had an inscription engraved on it, signed with the initials L.B. The moment Omri had seen this, when they'd first come to look at the house their mother had inherited, he had known the house would be lucky for them. Those initials, the same as Little Bear's, always, whenever he encountered them, had a magic significance. He told his father about this as well as he could. "This magic of yours seems to crop up in unexpected places," said his father slowly. "L.B. It rings a bell somehow. About something else. Can't place it at the moment. Well, tell me more about about going back." "We found out the key fitted the lock on the chest," Omri said eagerly. "The key fits a lot of different locks, so I got into the chest and Patrick locked it. The next thing I knew, I was in Little Bear's village, in a forest clearing just at sunset long ago. You see, Dad, when you go back, you're small, just like when they come to us. You have to have something to inhabit. Yes, to bring to life. They don't have plastic toys back then, so I mean my spirit, or whatever bit of me actually traveled back in time, became part of a painting on the side of an Indian tent." "A wigwam?" "No, a wigwam's something different. This was a teepee. They have animal designs painted on them. I think I was a beaver, or maybe a porcupine." Omri glanced anxiously at his father, half expecting him to laugh, but his face was entirely serious. "Animals are very important to Indians, not just to hunt. I've read about it. Each clan— Do you know what a clan is?" His father nodded, frowning. "Each clan has its own clan animal. Little Bear's clan animal must be a bear, I suppose. I never asked him. I expect he got it in a dream. Dreams are well important to Indians." "Yes, I think I knew that, but I don't think they got their names from dreams. Anyways, I sort of stuck there on the outside of the teepee, and then there was an attack by an enemy tribe. They set the teepee on fire, and I was nearly burnt to death," he concluded as carelessly as if such an adventure happened to him all the time. His father stopped in his tracks. "My God! That time we came home and you had a burn on the side of your head, you made up some cock-and-bull story about a bonfire, right? Luckily, Patrick turned the key and brought me back just in time. It hurt like mad," Omri remembered. His father stood on the cliff path with the rough gray channel